The stakes were high for President Biden's State of the Union, with the general election now officially underway and his job approval numbers low. President Biden's speech covered everything from improving the economy to reproductive rights and preserving democracy. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest from Capitol Hill.
The President of the United States.
President Biden addressing the nation tonight in one of the most important speeches of his political life.
I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have.
The fight for freedom, an overarching theme tonight as the president tries to reignite his re-election bid.
My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy.
The president vowing to fight for reproductive rights.
Send me a Congress that supports the right to choose. I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
As protesters gathered outside over his handling of the Israel-Hamas war, inside the chamber, President Biden addressed both family members of Israeli hostages and lawmakers from his own party outraged about the suffering in Gaza.
I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters.
The president pressing House GOP members to pass aid for Ukraine, as well as funding for Israel and the U.S. southern border.
Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching.
Without naming former President Trump, President Biden contrasting their values.
Now other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me.
Former President Trump using his social media platform to rebut tonight's speech.
We cannot take it any longer as a country.
With the 2024 general election now underway, President Biden seizing the moment as both commander-in-chief and candidate. President Biden never actually said the name Donald Trump, but he went after his predecessor and now Republican rival repeatedly in an official presidential speech that came with a lot of campaign undertones. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Well, our Verify team was watching closely to fact-check the claims President Biden made tonight. First, on the economy.
Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world and tending lower.
Now, this claim needs context. It's true that inflation peaked at 9% in June of 2022 and has since fallen to 3%. That is lower than in much of the world, but it's not the lowest in the world. Several countries have lower inflation rates. For example, Canada's is below 3%. Okay, next, reproductive freedom.
But the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade.
Now, that's false. The Alabama Supreme Court issued a ruling declaring that frozen embryos are legally considered children, and that caused confusion with several clinics pausing their IVF services. But the ruling did not actually ban it statewide, and the state has since passed a law to make it clear doctors won't face criminal prosecution for offering IVF. Well, for more State of the Union fact-checking from our Verify team, you can head to our website at kgw.com.
I declare the 2024 regular session 82nd Legislative Assembly is adjourned. Sine die.
And with that, Oregon's legislative session wrapped up tonight. And now several bills are on their way to the governor's desk to be signed into law. Catherine Cook is here with a look at some of the last to pass. Catherine?
Well, Tim, from recriminalizing drugs to addressing concerns over artificial intelligence, lawmakers were busy this short session. And now the bills they passed are in the governor's hands. Speaking of Governor Kotek, tonight she released a statement saying she intends to sign House Bill 4002 within the next 30 days. That's the bill that would roll back Measure 110, partially recriminalizing possession of small amounts of hard drugs. It also lets individual counties choose whether they want to prosecute users or send them to treatment. Supporters touted it as a compromise that gives both police and treatment providers the tools they need to help those who are addicted to drugs. That compromise came up tonight in a news conference with Oregon's House Speaker and Senate President. They noted how Democrats and Republicans work together to find a solution and hope to see more of that in the future.
There wasn't a lot of elbowing around. There was just authentic engagement with people to actually talk about how do we drive towards solution. And that's what I'm really proud about this session. And I'm hoping that this leads to more authentic engagement like this when we're addressing the big thorny problems that are facing Oregonians going.
Today, lawmakers passed House Bill 5201. The funding package supports several projects, including a new ballpark for the Hillsborough Hops. It's money the team needed to be able to stay in Hillsborough. And earlier this week, lawmakers passed a bill which makes drug use on public transportation a high-level misdemeanor crime. It would carry a maximum sentence of up to a year in jail and $6,000 fine, or both. Lawmakers also passed the first two bills in state history that regulate AI. One would create a task force to study consequences of artificial intelligence. The other would require political campaigns to disclose the use of AI in ads and other forms of communication. Also worth noting tonight, Oregon has a new House Speaker. Representative Julie Fahey, Democrat from Eugene, was sworn in. She replaces House Speaker Dan Rayfield. He resigned tonight and is running for Attorney General. Tim.
All right, Catherine, thanks a lot. Well, developing tonight in Salem, police are investigating an afternoon shooting that happened in a busy park. At least one person has died, and two people under the age of 18 were hurt. Alma McCarty has the latest from Salem.
After several hours, Salem police cleared the scene here at Bush's Pasture Park following a shooting that left one dead and two injured.
It's horrific.
Thursday afternoon, officers combed through the crime scene as those on the other side of the tape looked on in shock and sadness.
Places like this should be literally a sacred place. They should be a place of peace, a place where people can congregate, be in a community, feel safe.
Around 1:45, neighbors reported the sounds of gunfire. And when police arrived, they found three male victims, one deceased and the other two injured from a shooting. According to officers, the two injured were younger than 18 and were taken to Salem Health for care. Police did not release the age of the person who died.
I can't imagine losing a child that way. I can't imagine having one of my kids being involved in something like that.
Lee Verana works at the hospital nearby. He's seen the effects of violence like this up close.
And I've been a physician for well over 30 years, and I've seen trauma. One of my first night as a doctor I was compelled to do CPR on a 21-year-old who had been shot that night.
Like many, he hopes to see an end to these senseless shootings, something many community members called for at a forum less than 24 hours prior.
I don't know what the answers are. I do know that I don't feel that guns should be as readily available in this country as they are.
School officials confirmed the nearby South Salem High School was locked down for a couple of hours and students instructed to avoid this area on their way home as police continued their investigation. Salem PD did not name a suspect or report any arrests. In Salem, Alma McCarty, KGW News.
Now let's get you caught up on tonight's other headlines. Tensions were especially high during a Multnomah County board meeting today as commissioners unanimously passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It also calls for the return of hostages and safe passage for humanitarian organizations. Multnomah County joins dozens of cities across the U.S. calling for peace in Gaza. Negotiators working in Egypt were trying to come up with a ceasefire deal, but word is tonight it won't happen before the start of Ramadan next week, as was the goal. A Washington woman has been arrested in a horrific case of animal abuse. It started last November when a lineman crew found an English retriever hurt in a ditch near Mount St. Helens. The dog had been shot in the head and had his snout duct taped. Yesterday, detectives arrested his previous owner in Castle Rock. 33-year-old Jessica Rosita Schmidt is now charged with first-degree animal cruelty. The good news is the dog, now named Trooper, recovered from his injuries. He has now been adopted as well. And authorities continue to search for three escapees from the McLaren Youth Correctional Facility in Woodburn. The trio ran away on the night of February 18th. You can see them on your screen right now. From left to right, they are Angel Diaz Barrera, Julian Diaz Navarro, and Xavier Swim. All three are 19 years old and have warrants out for their arrest. Call 911 if you see them.